G'day everyone, welcome to another video from Sweeney's Creek Farm. Today is garden preparation and tomato planting session. As you can see, we're getting our garden beds ready here. It's about 2 months into spring. We're well behind time when we should have these tomato plants in, but as you've seen from previous videos, we've had a very unseasonal spring. It's been very wet, very cold and quite miserable and not very conducive for planting tomato plants. So we're starting to get ready here now. We've weeded the beds out, got them all nice and clear. We're just about to put some amendments in there, a little bit of compost and just get some goodness in there for them. We're going to test our sprinkler system to make sure that they're all working and we don't have any blockages. And then we're going to be putting some weed mat, as you see here. You might see that we've already started to put some holes in there. We'll just show you how we've done that. We've placed these holes 45 centimetres, 450 mil, or about 1.5 feet apart. And then the tomato plants will all go in there with a nice handful of worm castings around them to give them a boost. And there'll be a wire up here with a string down for them, the tomato plants, to grow up. As you can see here, we're planning to set out all 4 garden beds with our tomato plants. As you can see here, this is a creme brulee burner from the kitchen, used for caramelising sugar on top of a nice dessert. It's also really handy for creating holes in this weed mat. As you can see with the weed mat, it's a plastic weave, and when you cut it, that weave creates a whole heap of little filaments that all unravel, and it can make a bit of a mess. The beauty of doing it with this is it will melt that plastic and seal it all together. This is our irrigation system we've got on each of these garden beds. We have a central pipe out in the middle of the pathway which leads down to a water tank with a pump. So the main leader pipe comes in off the main pipe there to a tap, so that means we can control, turn it on and off. It then goes into a closed loop system. So this is a sealed loop that goes all the way around the garden bed. It's a dripper hose, so it has small dripper holes on there, and the beauty of doing it as a closed loop is that you don't have pressure building up on one end. It fills that up to the same pressure and then feeds the water out in all of the dripper holes equally. Our task at the moment, we've got the pump going, filling the pipes up with water, and we're just going to turn it on and test to make sure that we're getting water dripping out of each of the dripper systems here, and making sure that's all good before we put the weed mat. These will actually go under the weed mat, and that will also help with direct delivery of the water to the plant, and also assist with protection of evaporation and making sure these beds stay nice and damp and give these tomatoes a good chance to grow. As you can hear, the water starting to run. And we're getting drips out of all of those. We're happy with that. That's all dripping out of each of the holes really well, so that's going to equally water that garden bed. So now what we can do is get the weed mat over to this side. We'll staple it along the back edge. We'll then use some U-shaped pins to actually pin the weed mat down here, and that just means we can lift it up and inspect underneath if we need to. We'll then get the tomato plants in all the holes with a little handful of worm castings to give them a start, and we're off and running.
Uncut edge.
Yep. Yep. So Julianne has a template here. She's got a mark on that piece of board at 45 centimetres or 1.5 feet, and she's just going along placing the board so she can just quickly burn a little hole. That's the centre point. She'll then go back and use the creme brulee burner to expand that hole out big enough for a tomato plant to go in. And so this is a great way to put holes in weed mat because it melts the edges and it means you don't have the fray and sort of getting all messy and horrible. So it's a great way to very quickly create a planting hole and still allow for the maximum coverage of the weed mat to keep the weeds out of our garden beds. As you can see there, she's just run the full length of the garden bed. Now she'll just go back and widen each hole so we've got enough room to plant in. The most important part of this for us is making sure that the water pipes are not underneath the hole and aren't going to get melted. So making sure that they're clear. Julianne's now going to just expand these holes. Any plastic that gets left behind, we'll just pick that up and get that out of the way. As you can see, just a very simple, quick and neat way to make a planting hole in your weed mat. In the process of checking the watering system, we discovered that one of the dripper outlets had created a fault and it was leaking out really quickly. So obviously the mechanism in there that controls the water flow has either fallen out or failed. So the water flow out of that dripper was way too much. You can't have that in this system because that then reduces the pressure out of all the other holes in the system, and you end up with one really wet patch here and everything else being dry. So unfortunately the only way to fix the problem is to cut out that particular section and then rejoin a new piece which has got the correct dripper system, an unbroken one if you like. So Julianne's just cutting out the section and then using some pipe joiners. Again, the creme brulee burner comes in really handy just to heat up the pipe and soften it so it's easy to push in. So you can see here she's got a section of pipe with 2 joiners at each end, and now it's just a matter of cutting out the piece in the sprinkling system and put it in, and then we're all good to go again. Again, just heat the pipe up a little bit just to soften it, make it malleable, and then that joiner will go in nice and easy. And then don't forget to put the clamp on. The clamp then makes sure that the water pressure won't remove it at a later stage, which is also not very conducive to an effective watering system. The idea there is not melting the pipe, we're just warming it up to make it soft. There you go.
Is that big enough? If it's not, I can make it a little bit deeper. Yep. Yeah. Does he? I don't know about Shadow.
And there you have it. We have all the tomato plants in. We have 4 rows of 28, 112 plants. Most of these are seedlings. Over on the far side over there, we do have some volunteer ones that have come up in various garden beds. We don't know exactly what they are. A couple have come from the one over here. We know they're going to be cherry tomatoes. The other ones have come from the compost and soil we put up here. They could be anything, so let's see what they turn out to be. Only thing we have to do now is to run some wire across the length of the high tunnel and some strings down for the tomatoes to grow, but they won't need that for a couple of weeks yet, and that gives us time to get that done. We think it looks really good. We've got the weed mat down. That's going to suppress the weeds and certainly give us a good chance of getting these tomato plants nice and strong and healthy. Julianne informs me that she's done a classic planting tomatoes technique here. So she's removed a lot of the lower leaves. She's planted them really deep, and as you know, tomato plants have a lot of hairs down the length of their stem. Those hairs have gone down in the ground, will actually sprout into roots. It'll get a good root ball and it'll make for a much stronger plant. The advantage of having the weed mat as well is, one, it certainly suppresses the weed growth. 2, it keeps the garden bed moisture in there, so it forms a bit of a barrier to stop it from evaporating. But more importantly, it actually stops any water from forming on there and splashing onto soil and then splashing up onto the leaves, which then leads to various diseases and rot within the tomato plant. So it's a real triple banger to make sure that the tomatoes have a really good start to life and get nice and strong and produce lots of fruit. You might notice Queen Gertrude, or Gertie as we call her, our one remaining elderly chicken. She loves it in here, but she's not going to be happy with us tonight. She's getting her wings clipped in an effort to stop her from flying, because we really don't want her getting into this area now and doing what chickens do, which is picking at plants and scratching and doing all those wonderful things. She can do that in the other 19.5 acres, but not in here. So anyway, we'll see how Gertie takes to that, and hopefully we can keep her out of this area. And the reason why Julianne hasn't been in this video and certainly hasn't done any of the talking, she has been feeling extremely unwell for the last week and a half. Has got very little voice, a lot of congestion on the chest, so she's stepped aside and just gone as camera operator for this one and let me step in, but I have been coached as to give the information exactly from her, so yeah, it's turned out really well. Hopefully she'll be on the mend real soon. You might remember an earlier video where I had to step in and plant some onions because Julianne had actually hurt her back, and there was a bit of a concern that my thumbs were black. The next video is going to be proof that they're actually more tending on the green side now. We've got an amazing onion crop that's come out of there, and we'll be harvesting those and hanging them up to dry. It's certainly going to give us a good supply of onions going forward. Thanks for being here. As always, guys, we really appreciate all the support and comments and you know, ticking the thumbs up and all that good stuff. It really gives us a real buzz when we see people coming in and enjoying the content. So thanks for being here. Hit that thumbs up button, and if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and join the family. Thanks very much, guys, and we will see you on the next one. Bye for now.